Welcome to Going In Blind. I'm your host, Zach Tidwell, and my guest this week was actually first mentioned on the show a couple months ago now, back in episode 73 with Kilroy's Workshop, and he piqued my interest. So I reached out to him afterwards, and now we're here, and I'm very excited to have him. His name is Steve Bigari, and he's a West Point graduate. He's also been in the restaurant industry for decades, including owning a McDonald's franchise for over 30 years, which I'm sure we'll probably dive into a little bit. But also, what I'm really excited to talk to him about is two big things. He's running a venture teaching underserved communities trade skills while also connecting them with community support and teaching them modern technologies like AI to help them lift themselves up out of their own situations and better their lives, whilst also running the restaurant AI side of the business at SoundHound AI. So a lot of these days when you hear AI getting talked about, a lot of times in a colloquial sense, it's talking about large language models, but they're doing a lot more with this. For most people, that's a kind of a novelty. It is a novel technology, but it is a novelty in the way that it's used for a lot of people. But they are taking what is entirely software and bringing it into the real world and innovating in the restaurant space with AI, bringing it to drive-throughs and the entire restaurant process, which is, I think, it's the first application I've seen of this in the modern world or in the real world. So this will be awesome. But before we dig into all of that, if you're new to the show, head over to my website at zachtidwell.com. There's a very, very powerful story behind this podcast, and I think you should know about it. So you can read about it there. And while you're there, if that piques your interest, you can also reach out to me for speaking engagements or join my mailing list to get added to the update list for any news that I have on two big projects that I have going on behind the scenes right now. If you've been listening for a while, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you're listening. Or if you happen to be watching, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All of that stuff just helps get these conversations out there more and helps me keep attracting big guests like Steve. But as always, thank you for listening. This is going to be a good one. And Mr. Steve Bigari, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Zach. I'm honored.
I already told you, I've been waiting for this one for a while. So I really appreciate you taking the time. You seem like I would imagine you are a stupidly busy man. So this is cool that we were able to make this happen. And I was really curious, what did you do in the Army exactly?
Well, after West Point, I was commissioned in the Corps of Engineers, which sounds really good. My degree's in engineering, but I was a combat engineer. And as you know, that's largely just, you get good at blowing things up.
Yeah.
Mostly I built some things, but mostly I blew things up. And, when the infantrymen and the armor guys got pinned down, they would call me forward and I'd get shot and we'd do it over again. Not for real in training. It was a standing joke with the new soldiers coming in. They all wanted to drive bulldozers, and I had to tell them that really wasn't in the job description. So
It's I was a grunt. I'm also not a combat vet, so I deployed twice, but didn't do any of this in combat. I'm
thankfully,
yeah. I stopped myself there because I've had to get past that. It's weird. I joined specifically to go into the infantry because I felt like that was how I felt like that's the way to serve. A lot of jobs in the military you can do in the civilian world, and I felt like boots on the ground was the way to actually serve, which is, that's a teenager's mindset. But having not actually done my job, in the real world it's something I've had to adjust to. So that's why I stopped myself. I was about to say fortunately, so thank you for correcting me on that. But, we worked with you guys a decent amount, and it's just, I don't know, it's more toys, more toys added to blowing stuff up, which is
great.
It's a cool gig. But how long were you in?
I went to West Point for 4 years, played football at Brown first, transferred to West Point, spent my 5-year hitch. Would have been a lifer, but my oldest daughter was born with some medical issues, and that's kind of where the whole McDonald's thing started. And it's just one thing you'll see as we unpack this. that everything in my life has pointed to this moment in time.
You like, is that a hindsight is 2020 thing, or is this a, some people believe in fate or things, you know, everything happens for a reason. Do you feel like it's in that vein of you were meant to do this, or this is just how everything has worked out? And looking
Well,
back.
my faith teaches me that I was put here for a purpose,
Mhm.
but really, man, you think about when you were 21, 22. There was no intentionality about anything.
No.
It was going to the next thing, you know. When I left Brown, I went to West Point so that I'd have a place to go for the summer. Then, I could tell great stories when I walked on at the University of Wisconsin, and I never got around to quitting. And then I tried to quit when I was at West Point, and they're very, that's a story in and of itself. But then as I got into the Army, I fell head over heels for it. And what a bit of lifer a lot of my classmates were, and have changed the world. But as I said, my daughter needed medical attention that the Army couldn't give her, so I made that choice, and that led to helping found the Colorado Springs Ron McDonald House, where when she was 3, she cut the ribbon on that house,
Oh, wow.
and then 30 years later, as she was the president overseeing the $11 million building of the new house. You see how in hindsight, all of these things get knit together.
Yeah. I don't, that's just, I, that's a beautiful thing I've seen on here, and it keeps coming up in this podcast. And I think a lot of people recognize it in their own lives. I've recognized this in my own life. Like it is kind of beautiful how things just do find a way to work out. Sometimes, people in bad spots can't, it's hard to see that when you're in a bad spot. But like if you keep putting in the work, whether that be on yourself or keep pushing forward with whatever you're pursuing, if you don't give up, it does find a way to work itself out. And it's just, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Go ahead.
Zach, I think you know a little bit about suffering, and I like to say suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. And I think hope is the most powerful force in the universe.
Yeah. What, obviously I don't want, not trying to pull super personal information out of here, but with when your daughter was born and you guys realized that she had some additional needs, and you mentioned that led you to the McDonald's endeavor, like what, I have a younger sister with Down syndrome. So our family had a moment similar. It was, well, she was born when I was 11, and it kind of changed everything for us. But for you as a parent, that's hard for me to, I was a child when my sister was born, and I also don't have kids. So it's hard for me to imagine like how did that change things for you, and how did you stay positive through all that stuff? And obviously you've gone on a tremendous path since, and so has she. So I want to hear about it all.
Well, honestly, again, I'm 24, and again, nothing is intentional. So I'm going to have my first child, and it's going to be this amazing thing. And the pediatrician said, as soon as she's born, I'll hold her up, and you can take a photo. And as soon as Sarah was born, they whisked her away and started working on her. And then 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting there in the hallway, and they tell me that all of her birth defects are midline defects. Her skull sutures were completely fused. She had a bunch of lateral, bilateral problems, pectus, some bone issues. And so, they were pointing out to me that with not the best bedside manner, that there was a good chance her heart and lungs were compromised, and she probably wouldn't make the night. So don't get too attached.
Oh God.
And that's kind of hard to deal with. And then the funny part is, again, I didn't try to do any of this. I just, what it's like being an infantryman. You just work the problem. You have to focus on your 3-foot world. It's all you can do. And if you try to do more, that's what gets you. So I would just work in the problem. And so I find myself, she's 3 months old. They're going to remove her skull and replace it. There were only 3 surgeons on the planet who could do this. So he basically cut her ear to ear, removed her skull, and then carved it up and put it back together like a puzzle, and so that her brain would have room to grow. And so imagine this. I mean, I lived in Colorado Springs at the time, and that's not where I met Ron, but we'll get to that later.
Okay.
I lived in Colorado Springs at the time, and I was serving in the 4th Engineer Battalion at Fort Carson. And so there was one of the doctors that could do this was up in Denver. He's really just amazing. And his name was Dr. Albin. And so I remember going and staying in the Denver Ron McDonald house. And I knew nothing about the Ron McDonald house except it was a free room. And I was a GI. So, I needed that.
The math checks out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sitting in the living room with parents, and we're talking about life, and I remember looking out the window. It's a vivid memory of looking out the window and watching people walk up and down the street. And I started to get very angry. Like, who are you that they're going to take my baby skull apart tomorrow, and your life is just going on. This is so unfair. About in the middle of that thought, a little boy named Michael, who was about 5 years old, came and jumped into my lap and just was so full of life. And, he had the purple dye markers on the side of his head. His head was completely shaved because he had what turns out to be my wife now, 5 years ago, how I moved to Texas. She had the same tumor this kid had, an intraventricular meningioma, a giant tumor in the inside of her ventricle. That's what Michael had. At that point, at that time, that was a death sentence, and his parents knew it. And in that moment, you just have this overwhelming sense of, I am so pathetic. These people have no hope. They have no hope. And look at this young boy. And I have hope. I have a chance, right? I have a fighting chance. And that really started me on the path of this notion that suffering produces perseverance, and everything leads to hope.
Yeah, I don't know. It erroneously, or for whatever reason on my end, I guess maybe projecting our own family's thing, situation. I had assumed that she wasn't your first child for some reason. That had to just be, I guess, I don't know that it would be any easier if she was your second, but that is.
No, man, you just walk through it.
Yeah. It's also just a weird small world that your wife ends up having that same kind of tumor all these years later.
You can't make it up. And miraculously they were able to save her, and largely through just an amazing surgeon and an AI, which is a really kind of a nice thing that ties the whole thing in a neat bow. But we'll get into that. I mean, as you walk through my life and you see how everything points there, every piece of it, you obviously can't see this, but on the desk behind me, I keep a sword collection. It started with one, which is at the top, and that's my West Point saber. That's the only one I had. And then when I turned 60, my wife gave me this 42-inch Conan the Barbarian sword, because I was like, baby, I'm falling out. Like I'm no good anymore. And she's like, baby, you're still a warrior. You're always going to be a warrior. And this will remind you of that. And then there's a Civil War cavalry saber here. This is how I met Ron. We'll tell that story maybe later if it comes up.
Yeah.
And everybody told me, I moved to Texas, and a friend of mine, John Bobo, gave this to me as a precious gift. And I could not find a blacksmith in all of Texas who would touch this sword to fix it. And then about the 6th person who told me, you need to meet Ron Hardman. And the second sentence was always, he won Forged in Fire.
I forgot to talk to him about that on that freaking podcast, and that bothered me so much after, like, that. But
so I would say, what the hell is Forged in Fire? And then the last guy, the 6th guy, a friend of mine, Dave Blue, says to me, Dave's a great entrepreneur. He says, I'm like, where's this guy anyway? And I had moved to Texas a couple of years, 3 years before. He said he lives in Colorado Springs. I said, I was the McDonald's operator. I had all the stores in Colorado Springs for decades. I know everybody in Colorado Springs. And David, his quiet, unassuming way, said, well, apparently you don't know Ron. So Ron restored this, the saber that you can't see. Sorry, I don't mean to tease you. And then this is a great testament. My son now, who tried to kill himself when he was in middle school, we'd adopted him from China. He's now 22. Zachary, he's amazing. He teaches blacksmithing for Ron. And I was telling him that I was reading about my knife. I'm holding up my sword. I was reading about my sword. And I told him that the officer who carried this in the Civil War would have had a D-handled Bowie knife. So my son made this for me, this D-handled Bowie knife, which is pretty impressive in and of itself. And then the last sword up here, which I think is the most remarkable thing to tie this whole thing together, is this one. And it completes the story. So this West Point sword, the one that's on the top, since 1802 has been made in Germany. You know, German manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
This sword is a stainless steel sword that Ron made at Kilray's workshop. This latest class, this year's class at the Air Force Academy, carries the first ever American-made saber. And to me, I speak and I put these two swords next to each other, and the difference is breathtaking. The craftsmanship between a German-made saber and this one, you can see it's got laser etched, the U.S. Air Force Academy, and then Ron put a wonderful inscription on there for me. But this is an ever-present reminder that my whole life is being put me. I'm going to set this down so I don't drop something. My whole life, it's just put me on this path, and then how it leads to AI is just remarkable.
Yeah, I'm so glad he brought you. I mean, he just, I don't even remember the context, but he brought you up while we were doing his episode. And I was like, I need to talk to that guy. So I mean, you know, what's the path forward here? Obviously, Sarah went through a lot in basically getting her head rebuilt, and I'm sure everything else that came along with her other birth defects, but obviously you built basically an empire, at least in Colorado Springs, with the McDonald's businesses that you already mentioned, but also then started driving. And for people who don't know, the Ronald McDonald houses, which you did lay out, but and these are co-located with hospital facilities, or at least nearby, so that families that are going through extended stays at hospitals have somewhere free. It's one less bill to be covered. And so, but like for you to have also had an impact in opening at least two of these facilities that you mentioned, I mean, what is that pathway there?
Well, that's the craziest thing, because I stayed in them whenever I could. Sarah's had I can't I stopped counting dozens of surgeries, as has Zachary. Zachary was born in China, and that was part of his challenge. He was born with a bunch of birth defects, a bilateral cleft lip and palate, other things. So we've had a lot of surgery, a lot of suffering. I stopped counting. I've never been admitted for an overnight stay in a hospital in my life, and I've spent more than 100 nights sleeping in an ICU. Just imagine that. So so that's where I've learned perseverance, because you can't control those things. Anyway, so I'm just going back about my business, living my life, waiting for the next surgery. And I get approached by a local pediatrician, John Gemrich, in Colorado Springs. He said, hey, we're going to build a Ron McDonald house, and we want you to come speak from a parent's perspective. And so I did. And then I joined the task force that became the original board. And then I served as the president of that board. And on my third stint as the president of that board, wearing my BDUs, I was approached by the guy who had just bought all the McDonald's in town, a man by the name of Brent Cameron, who opened 63 countries for McDonald's. 63, not 63 restaurants, China, Russia, every country in Europe. It could go on for days. He had been the number 3 guy at McDonald's, number 2 guy actually at McDonald's, led the global restaurants team for decades. And he approaches me at the end of a board meeting and he said, I just bought these restaurants and I want you to run them. And I had just gone through a recruiter 5 for 5 with Fortune 100 companies. And I was so full of myself. I said, you know what? I'm honored, sir, but you see, I'm going to go be a big fish in a big pond. And Brent just laughed. He said, I was there. I've been there. You're going to be a stiff in a Brooks Brothers suit and you're going to hate it. And then he said, when you get to New York, I went to work for a big Fortune 100 company. When you get to New York and you realize that I'm right, call me because I'm a patient guy and you're the right guy. And
Also humble for him to be like, oh, like, you'll see. Just come back to me when you're ready.
He was the most brilliant strategist, the most humble person, the wisest person I've ever met. 4 months later, I hated it. I called him. They drugged me down to the world headquarters of this Fortune 100 company and told me what an idiot I was. I was throwing my life away, that no self-respecting company on earth would ever touch me again after I worked for McDonald's. Brent, when he was leading real estate legal at McDonald's, wrote a franchise agreement that allowed me to be the only person ever to become a McDonald's franchisee that wasn't approved by McDonald's. Let me tell you, they didn't like that very much. But we had an agreement where if he was killed, I would run his restaurants to ensure that his family got the most value out of those restaurants. And that tragically happened. He and his wife were killed in a climbing accident on Maroon Bellows. And I was thrust into doing battle with McDonald's. They, you know, what happened commonly in that case is they would just come in and buy the restaurants and take them over. And Brent had this whole thing mapped out, the strategy for doing it, and he just laid out a playbook for me to do it. And that's how I begrudgingly became a McDonald's operator. They weren't happy about it, but it must have worked out pretty well because a year in, I had more than double, 250% increase in revenue in that restaurant. And if you know how McDonald's is compensated, it's on the percentage of revenue. So they didn't care much. And over the next 10 years, they spent 10 years shoving a dozen or so restaurants down my throat. And it worked out pretty well for all of us.
And he did that because he heard you share your story about the Ronald McDonald House.
Yeah, he had watched me in this third tour. It was a very transitional tour. And that's, they always called me back when stuff hit the fan. And this is when the house was merging with a global charity named Ron McDonald House Charities. And it was very controversial. And so it was an amazing time to be involved in an organization that's undergoing tremendous change and angst. And that's really kind of what I specialize in. So over the years, I've founded or led more than 20 companies. And that was clearly the biggest one until I got to SoundHound. And that's probably a better story. But again, a story about an amazing visionary. So, after Brent was killed, I operated those restaurants and my team did amazing things, just set the standard for McDonald's. I was blessed to be able to lead the innovation team. And then you get to a point where you reach a point in your life and you say, how many records can I get? How many awards can I achieve? And then you look for something else. And one of the big things I wanted to do was transform the lives of working people, because when you think about it, you work at McDonald's, and I've never paid anyone minimum wage in my life, but you make your fortune on the backs of hardworking people who make very little money. So I started a nonprofit about 20 plus years ago called America's Family that is really designed to do that. and it's only recently pivoted to trades education for reasons you'll see are very easy. That's an easy connect the dots when we get there, because trades are the new plan A.
Yeah, and I had seen that quote, and I do want to ask you about it later.
Yeah.
But so it's just it's interesting. Yeah, on top of everything, I mean, you know this. There's 37 different interesting facets of this that you've already talked about. But like it's not like you weren't a supply officer in the Army. It's yes, as an officer, you're still running logistics and stuff like that for your platoon or whatever. I'm guessing at 5 years in, you were still at the platoon level, but um, that's very different being the platoon commander for a bunch of combat engineers as opposed to a supply shop or whatever else. And the fact that it all transfers over. And I think some of that touches on the way, obviously you're a West Point grad, which is it's a specific kind of person, but also a very high caliber. They're forging leaders there, but also just the military in general and what you talked about you get very good at being given a task and maybe some constraints, but just an end goal of this is what must happen at this time by, with these things, and like you will figure it out. But with that, like, did you ever wonder, and you didn't discuss the timeline between when that agreement was signed with Brent and when he and his wife died, but at face value with the information that I have, that almost sounds I get the fact that they were both killed at the same time and the fact that that paperwork was specifically set up for that. Did you ever question like if there was some shenanigans there?
No, it was years later. He
Okay.
did that on day one, and it was more than 7 years later. He had climbed mountains all over the world. He had climbed 39 of the 51 or 52 14ers in Colorado. He'd climbed all over Europe. I mean, he was very accomplished. This was a freak accident. They were on Maroon Bells. It was in June, and there was a slab avalanche. The whole team got swept down the mountain on this slab, and only he and Marcy were killed.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was just a completely freak accident. And I was at a James Taylor concert. I'll never forget it. It just broke my heart because the other story, the theme in my life is, uh, I have been so fortunate to have the greatest leaders, the greatest men in my life to mentor me and to teach me. And so many of them were taken from me so young. And he was only in his 50s. And I would give everything back. I swear to you today, I would give everything back to have him here today, but that's not the way it works. So again, right next to me here is a sign. I don't even think you can see it in this shot. I'll try to turn the camera a little bit. But there's a sign that hung on Brent's wall, and it says God's guidelines for a successful business. And when his children asked me what I wanted, I was able to buy a restaurant and then grow that into a bunch. I said, I just want that sign. I want it. So it's hung over my desk ever since that day.
I I wish I could take a tour of your office. Like I to see all the different memorabilia that's in there. It's neat, man.
It's
It's
it's uh it's a it's just a testament to God's power in my life.
and a life well lived. Seems like to me. That's
Well, I like to think so.
yeah. Well, and there's something to said it yourself that you've had a lot of great mentors and other men in your life, but like that, some of that might be luck, but some of that is also a lot of that is good people attract good people, right? Like that there's some magnetism that happens there, whether it be those higher above you or with a greater reach recognizing that in you or just so happening that way. Like that's cultivated through your own actions, whether directly or indirectly. So I just it's interesting. So with with all this, you've established an empire. Unfortunately, obviously having lost Brent and one of your huge mentors, but and this just kind of aligned with the help you were already doing to help further and grow Ronald McDonald with these you having been able to kind of move the ball forward for other families who might be facing stuff like you guys did with Sarah.
Yeah, sure. And I continue to support them today. It's such an amazing organization. But then really, I felt called to use the breadth of my experience to have a bigger impact. And so America's Family was the vehicle for that. It's 501c3. And it's been that vehicle for a couple of decades. And then after I met Ron and I realized that trades are the key to unlocking the future. And this is something no one talks about. I haven't heard anyone else talk about it. I learned from very wise people like Mike Rowe and many others who talk about AI, Jensen Wong and my CEO, Kayvon Mahajer. The SoundHound story, I can't wait to unpack that for you because
I was excited.
that's just an amazing story. He's one of the most powerful, wise men and brilliant. Literally the smartest person I've ever met. And so then I started putting all those things together, and I realized that I had a view, a sight line, as it were. Hate to use that metaphor with you, man, but
It does not. You're not going to offend me, dude. I love the blind jokes, whatever. Just don't worry about it.
it really gave me a sight line into the fact that, people say that AI won't hurt the trades. And what they miss, they're burying the lead. AI will be the greatest accelerator of training the trades. We're at a point in history where we cannot fill the jobs. We're short millions of tradespeople. We cannot train them fast enough. We can't recruit them, engage them fast enough. And the only path to filling those jobs is through AI. So not only will these careers be future proof, and now they're 6-figure jobs. Think about that. They will be rapidly accelerated with AI, and we can unpack some of that as we work through this.
Well, it's a critical thing to talk about because the labor shortage that we have here, specifically the skilled labor shortage, it is a national security issue. Like a great example is our shipbuilding capacity compared to China's. I mean, they're putting tens of ships out for every one of ours.
Yes, and that's how you keep the world safe.
Yeah, and their biggest shipyard, I think their biggest shipyard alone is more productive than all of our shipyards combined, if I remember correctly. I mean, this is when they move on Taiwan, which is going to happen at some point. That is going to be a huge component of that. It's going to be, we're going to see that in combination with, the new era of warfare where we've seen is a lot more technological, and you're going to see guys like Palmer Luckey's technologies coming into play there. But you still need the ships as the home base for all of these technologies. Like this is a huge, huge issue. And with I think people get caught up. Again, I mentioned it in the intro, but for people listening, most of you, when you hear the term AI, when you're hearing about that, it's in reference to ChatGPT or Claude or Google Gemini. And these are all just large language models. They're big probability tables that are basically very, very intelligent, like distributed systems that perform almost next word. Just like you get a suggestion when you're typing something in an email and it'll suggest your next word. It's kind of the same thing, except it's using a baseline of all human data on the internet that it's ever been able to consume. So very powerful. Obviously, we've seen that it can reproduce human writing and human, the written word very well. Though if you're paying attention, you can still spot the oddities and still know, okay, this person, like I get it. People are reaching out to me with emails. It's like very obvious when it's AI, but eventually that will fade. But it's I think the biggest area that it is a hindrance is specifically when people just in general, when the individual is using it as a means to offload their own cognitive load, it should be a productivity tool. It should not be a thinking tool. Like where they've done studies on college students where there's a direct drop in students who are regularly using these LLMs to perform those tasks for them. Between that and their critical thinking skills, they drop off. That is a muscle that you need to exercise. And I think that's where this is so important, because I think people probably hear that a lot. I know I've talked about it on here. I had one of the founders of Siri on here a couple months ago as well, Adam Chire, and like we talked about this. That's very important for people to be aware of. But I think that's where, outside of the thought that AI is going to steal your job, which as a software engineer I think is also very, I think that's inaccurate in terms of technical tech jobs. But so people get this kind of like doom and gloom and not seeing that this is a massive productivity tool. And especially like you guys are, at least at SoundHound AI, are starting to bring it to the real world and start pairing it there. But are you also, when you're talking specifically, given your experience in teaching the skilled trades now, how can you explain how it's accelerating and acting as a force multiplier in these professions?
Yeah. So let me first go back and exclamation point a couple points that you made. I think it's important to understand that jobs aren't disappearing, they're being unbundled. The tasks are shifting faster than education systems can adapt. And when institutions lag, people feel expendable, even though they're not. So in my 2 decades of restaurant work, we have eliminated positions with AI, but we've created far more jobs than we've removed. So when people ask me, will AI replace me? I say that's the wrong question. The right question is, how does AI amplify your skill? And you hit the nail on the head when you talk about really becoming a force multiplier, helping you unbundle things. And so in the trade specifically, we're using AI to build a place where work, learning, and dignity all live on the same block. And with that massive skilled trades shortage, exploding trade wages, and my passion for hardworking people, it really led me to help create a workforce operating system that we put a cool little name around it. We call it 1848. And now that it keeps expanding to other people, wanted it all across the globe. Our kind of cozy phrase, we always have code names for everything. We call it 4IR Global. So it's really, I believe that we are already in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution. I believe that it will make the first three look trivial. And if you think of the inflection point, my pet project name for this is called 1848, because the second industrial revolution was born in 1848. So is my new adopted hometown, McKinney, Texas. And as a military historian, you understand very quickly in the military that people who learn from history can actively predict and take advantage of what's coming in the future by applying the new tactics and weapons. And so if you think about the second industrial revolution, the inflection point for it was 1895, when all those people had moved over in 1848 and the immigrants had created the workforce that was ready to fuel the factories. And then electricity was found, and then it was Niagara was the key because we had to distribute it. And that was the distribution of power. That unlocked everything. And if you think about what people were saying at the time, just look at what people were saying at the time. It's the exact same thing they're saying today. It's going to destroy everything. It's going to take away all the jobs. How did that work out for the people prognosticating that, right? So now AI can distribute cognition. That's the power of it. You said it when you said a large language model, any agent, whether it's deterministic or agentic. And for, I don't want to get into all the tech talk. I'm a hamburger guy who does AI. So, but it's really simple. When you think of an agent, think of a person who does a specific task. That would be a deterministic agent. And then a RAG agent or a smarter agent, think about them. That'll be one that could bundle things together. And now you connect all these agents together, and they have all of the knowledge of everything we've gathered since the beginning of history. And so they can accelerate things very quickly, but they can't think. It's not thinking. Humans have to think. And when humans do the thinking and they use the tools effectively, just like any other weapon, a weapon or a tool can be used for incredible good or unspeakable evil. Look at the third industrial revolution. Look at the internet. It's used, that saved Brenda's life. AI and the internet saved her life with that.
That's your wife?
Yeah, that had killed Michael all those years earlier. Now they were able to deal with it because of that technology and the training that went into that. That's the same kind of tools we're using today in the trades to accelerate, amplify, and magnify, and really also change the means of production. As you think about the sword that Ron built for the Air Force Academy, it uses incredible technology. For example, they're forging this thing in a CNC machine, and they are literally 3D printing stainless steel here. It's just remarkable, like things you could never have done back in the 1800s.
Dude, just technology in general is wild. So I shot myself back in 2019 and they rebuilt like this whole part of my face is titanium in my sinuses now. And they 3D printed that in 2019. It was a tub of titanium powder and they run a laser over it over and over and over, all based off of a scan of the side of my skull that was intact. And it's, again, with the way technology's moving, that was almost 7 years ago now since like, and that you've already touched on it, like the rate at which technology is accelerating our Moore's law, the time at which the computing power is, on a devices or the available computing power is doubling, is shrinking and shrinking. And now I think our big linchpin, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this as being part of this fourth technological revolution, I think is going to be nuclear. Like our big crux right now is energy with the data centers for all of these different, whatever the AI provider is that we're talking about, that is our linchpin right now. And that's why they've already started investing in one. I think it might be Google is trying to spin up 3 Mile Island again. There's other companies that are investing in developing their own nuclear plants to source that. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, but first I want to say how glad I am that I want you to think about this when bringing this back to suffering producing perseverance. Think about when you unpack your story. Think about your story 10 years earlier, and now how you've been able to use this second chance that was afforded you through that amazing technology to do what you're doing right now. It's breathtaking. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. So, I can opine on nuclear power. I think it's really as simple as we have the smartest people in the world. The nuclear power, nuclear fission, fusion. I mean, fusion is the ultimate power source. And
Fusion, yeah.
that's right. We have hydrogen power. I don't know what it'll be. I know we have the smartest people in the world. B, this technology is accelerating everything. C, they'll solve it because they have to. We need the energy. And how fun is that, right? The second industrial revolution came to life in 1895 when we figured out how to distribute electricity. And today, electricity will distribute cognition.
That is fascinating.
Again, you have to learn from history, or you'll never really understand how to exploit the future.
Yeah. And that's, first of all, I think people listening, we agreed here. We're not going to get into the crazy technicalities because neither one of us are experts in this, but we'll go back and listen to that episode with Adam Chire. I think it was episode 56, but we got into all the nitty gritty technical stuff and it's very interesting. But one other thing that he did, he's kind of predicted several of the like, I guess the digital kind of revolutions that we've had in terms of like the next big leap forward. And if I remember correctly, I think his next prediction based on like this model that has kind of proven itself over several decades is I think 2035-ish, if I remember right, for him to be the next, like what might be the next big iteration in our leaping forward, which is kind of crazy to think because LLMs have just finally now made their way onto the scene, but it's very much so still that looking at the past and projecting that onto the future. But with you guys, this you mentioned, I don't remember what you mentioned the acronym or the title of it being, but you mentioned a workforce operating system. Are you speaking, was it literally a tech solution that this is a tech platform that you guys have built?
It's more than a tech platform. Or in the, it's funny. My whole life and the people that I find myself attracted to, we all say the same thing. We quote Ross Perot, in we always talk about build a plane while we fly it, and that's exactly what we're doing here with the trades. So the trades operating platform is a combination of many things. It's a combination of really at the foundational level, teaching trade schools how to operate more productively, more efficiently. And that's done through. So your guest, Ron, the guy who won Forged in Fire, who made that sword, who, and I hadn't watched Forged in Fire for all the groupies. Sorry. I didn't know anything about it until I met Ron and watched his episode. And the irony of it, my son Zachary now is a welding instructor at Kilroy's. Is there in McKinney? Yeah, they're popping up all over the place, because as you pointed out in shipbuilding, welding is one of the biggest things that we need, and it's something that we do very poorly. So the current operating system to train welders generally centers around community colleges. Takes about 2 years, costs a lot of money. The certification rates are generally in the 50% range after 2 years. And with our operating system that Ron's using to train welders today, we have 100% certification rate in 7 weeks or less. 7 weeks or less. So these welders are certified and able to go out into the street. And right now we're in the process of building a welding helmet that has a camera, heads-up display. We can refine the visual. We get speed. We'll get heat. We'll put 3D LiDAR into the helmet. So we will measure the weld in real time. If you think about how when they do those ships today, they build an aircraft carrier or a building or an oil rig. Somebody comes around with a fancy iPad afterwards and has to LiDAR every weld to make sure that that's safe. This will happen in real time as the welder's producing it.
That's incredible.
Now we're writing the code to just started this to train them faster and supervise them in real time. So you'll have an agent in your ear and on the heads-up display telling you everything to do, and that agent will then be tied to a master who, instead of training one person at a time, will be able to train hundreds of people at a time.
Jeez, how far out do you guys think you are in terms of this being actually out in the world, this helmet?
Okay, so the system is out in the world already. Ron is building Kilroy's so quickly he can't keep up. But it's not about Kilroy's or 1848 or the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's about partnering with everyone everywhere. So, for example, America's Family, my nonprofit, partners with the Association of Independent Trade Schools. And then we use Ron software, Catalan, as an operating system to double their profitability so that they can train more people more efficiently, more quickly. Trade schools generally don't make money. And Ron started out in AI at Oracle 20 years ago, and then he used his shop teacher background to build Kilray's Workshop, which is a blacksmithing shop. And I learned very quickly watching kids from all walks of life go in there that when you put a 2,000-degree piece of metal in somebody's hand, you get their undivided attention. They're not looking at their cell phones or any of that. So when they come on there and say, I want to be a blacksmith, then you say, well, unless you're a Viking, there's probably not a lot of those positions around. There's some, you can make a decent living as a blacksmith.
Very niche stuff.
Right. To be a blacksmith, you have to weld. And then we show them, we like to say blacksmithing is a gateway drug to welding. So we use blacksmithing to draw young people in, and then we teach them welding. And then from welding, we can transition them everywhere. So I want to get back to the helmet.
Okay.
So we're tackling the helmet first because it's the most sophisticated of everything that we can build. And knowing Ron, it should take years. I suspect he'll have it done in 6 months. But as soon as that's done, now think about all the gaming glasses. They're a couple $100 a set. You can buy them anywhere for a couple $100. For folks who don't know, they have heads-up displays. They have mics and speakers and the side batteries. So as we use that technology to inform a welding helmet, it's the most sophisticated thing you can do in the trades. Think about what we're measuring. As soon as that's complete, you put glasses on somebody, and then you drop in a large language model for framing or plumbing or HVAC or electrical, any other trade, and you have an instant coach for millions of people across the globe.
And as secondary checker, like, your backstop against the person, the inspector going out, or, against that technician doing their work and being like, hey, you're off there, you missed something. That is
That's right. Everything is checked in real time. And then think about that.
Wow.
So there's 200 tradespeople working on, but let's call it electricians working, and a single master. That's probably, I don't know what the percentage will turn out to be, but I think that's roughly where it'll turn out. Now the agents inside the glasses are telling that kid, no, sorry, that stud's supposed to be 16 inches. That's quarter inch off. Move it, right? And the kid blows it off and he does it again. He leaves it there. And then he goes on to the next one. She wires the house wrong. And it tells her, don't do that. And then she moves on. The master gets tapped and they immediately get fed to the glasses. Hey, Zach, what part of 18 inches didn't you get? So, and this is why you have to do that. And you can see how quickly we'll be able to bring young people on. And these jobs today, a welder in Texas or Oklahoma, certified welder, it's a six-figure bit. It's a six-figure job.
I think that's like starting wise. I've heard Mike Rowe talk about it. Yeah.
Starting. And we are doing that today in 7 weeks. In Ron's latest class, he had 2 students finish in 5. One of them got his second certificate. He had 2 Meg and Tig or whatever it is, some two different ones in 7 weeks. I've never heard of that ever.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of shots to the head, so my memory isn't the greatest. I feel like I know we talked about that short certification. I can't remember if we talked about the helmet. That has to have been how you came up when we were talking. Now that like it's all coming full circle. It just, and really, that's just that can apply outside of the trades. That can apply to nurses going through training. That can apply to surgeons eventually going through trade. That can everything, and it will
apply everywhere.
Wow.
So think about restaurants. This is as we do this, the welding helmet is the first thing. In AI, I was the first person to deploy AI in a restaurant scenario, in a drive-through scenario. I picked drive-through, and it was 2017 in Odessa, Texas, if you can imagine that. Which I'd never been to Odessa before, but I digress. Um, it, so I picked drive-through because my whole life was about drive-through. Everything was about, it's always about trying to conquer the next thing, about being the best at the hardest thing. And in the restaurant business, drive-through is the hardest thing. And if you think about AI, drive-through AI, you have high noise, multiple speakers, accents, and you're generally in a car. It's the Mars mission of AI. So I wanted to tackle that first because if you can take a drive-through order, you can pretty much do anything with voice. And that's when I had grown my company to about a little over 10,000 locations. And that's when out of the blue, Kayvon Mahajer, I'm back to that, absolutely the smartest person I've ever met, reached out to me and he had this simple value prop. He said, Steve, I have the best conversational AI, the greatest conversational AI company on the planet, and you have more restaurants than everybody else put together. If we bring them together, 1 + 1 will equal 200. I remind him all the time that he underestimated that a little bit, but I
Always should it have been.
I don't know, but I'm not complaining a bit.
Okay.
So it's the first time in 35 years I have a boss, and he's just amazing. He founded SoundHound about 21 years ago in the Stanford dorm he was a graduate student, number one in his class, with his buddy James Hom, and they filled the dorm room full of servers, so they had to get an apartment somewhere because SoundHound the room was too hot because the SoundHound servers were in the dorm room, so they had to live somewhere else.
That is
Same year, I founded my call center, my restaurant drive-through call center company, because I had to figure out a way to beat Chick-fil-A. So another story for another day.
that is so that's very Mark Zuckerberg-esque. Like I think when he was at MIT, I think they crashed MIT, sir. I think it was MIT that he went to. I think they crashed their servers when he uploaded like the first version of Facebook because it blew up. So like he basically hacked into their system, routed everything through it, and crashed the school's freaking internet, at least in his dorm building. It's so the fact that brainiacs like that just exist out there, and it's obviously if he was doing it with his roommate, there's two of them at the same time. I mean, who knows how many of these people are out there that we just haven't discovered yet, him included. Like I've never heard of him, but I absolutely should have until
He's one of the people that just give me so much hope that when you think about the third industrial revolution, we got a lot wrong with the internet. We got a lot wrong. And as a practitioner of AI, I think it's so important for us now to think in advance that this is that's the most powerful tool that mankind has ever created. And we should magnify the good and really, really, really work overtime to minimize the evil people are going to do with it. And, you can't keep people from doing bad with stuff. So you really got to try to accelerate the good, I think. And that's the story of everything we're doing. And I think it spread, once you do that, it just spreads out like a virus. And that's what we're going through right now. It's very exciting. I don't think anybody can accurately predict how or when it's going to happen. So if you think about the second industrial revolution, the first shot was fired in 1848. That's when the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed, and a big chunk of America was added. All the immigrants came from all of the revolutions that happened in Europe, and that led to a little thing like the 49ers. They were our gold rush people. They became our factory. They built our factories, and factories really took hold when electricity was transferred. So now it's not 50 years later. I mean, AI is not 2 decades old. It's realistically, uh, I've been doing it since 2015, so about 10 years.
Yeah.
A lot of people were doing it way before me. So, Kayvon and those pioneers, Jensen and others were doing it 20 years.
Yeah, Adam, when he was on here, had mentioned that he was working on this stuff in 1993. So it's been in the background building.
That's right. Now imagine in my decade, I've seen things move faster in the last 6 months than the last 10 years put together.
To get it's all of that culminating with the rate at which just computing power is becoming cheaper, more efficient, and more powerful all at the same time. It's all culminating with obviously the decades of research that has gone into developing these systems, and now that they are finally meeting ahead, like the rate they are coupling now, like that in and of itself is going to continue. The rate at which that technology iterates is just going to be, I mean, it already is. Like as you've said, you've seen more progress in the past 16 months. Like or in the past 6 months than in the past 10 years. Like that will continue to accelerate. It's going to, for a time, there will be plateaus, but almost exponential growth, which is kind of where we're at right now.
It's hard to imagine that there will be significant plateaus like we've seen historically because the most complex problems, uh, think about it. We have the smartest people with the most powerful tools now solving them. So it's like we have armies of brilliant people now. When you had to just use a small select group of entrepreneurs in the past, I can't tell you how many two guys or gals in a garage are using LLMs to create their own companies. And that's why I'm so blessed to be at SoundHound, because the secret sauce of SoundHound is Kayvon's vision from the beginning was to tie everything together. So his inspiration was Star Trek, right? And
It's a proper nerd story.
right, so he saw these officers, these Starfleet officers, speaking into these giant machines and having them do these amazing things, and he saw a world powered by voice, and that's the crux of SoundHound. So we've been integrating with everything you touch: cars and computers and cell phones and restaurants and hotels and hospitality and retail and travel, every place you touch, every device you touch for decades. So it's an amazing head start. I'm very
I think,
fortunate to be where I'm at.
yeah. And I think the fact that it started with Star Trek, this is actually a perfect kind of portrayal of our humans, on one hand, incredible ability to try and project what the future is going to be like. Obviously, sci-fi is that as a genre. I read a lot of sci-fi books. Like that is where a lot of even stuff that you're seeing now, like I brought up Palmer Luckey earlier and Palantir and what they're doing in the defense industry. Like he's even talked about, like a lot of this stuff was talked about back in like books from like the 80s and the 60s, and where it's now, though you have these minds that are looking so far forward. And so bringing that in with Star Trek, like I never watched Star Trek, but I've heard people talk about this. So even in that, when he's seeing those officers talk to each other, it was radios. It was radios they were doing. It was never, they didn't see the cell phone coming or anything like it. They were stuck on radio. And so to think of where we've gone since then, and like that was something that was never really seen coming, but that's at the same time inspired him to move forward. There are going to be things even along this journey for him and other people doing, adjacent endeavors to what you guys are doing that are going to take us in more directions that no one has any inkling is coming right now, but in 5 years it will be actuality.
Well, and I think the accelerant of that is, and this is what I've seen from Ron and what we're doing with America's Family, um, that when you take a practitioner of a craft, it doesn't matter what the craft is, and then you place AI in that context, and you unleash the power of agents, agentic AI, into that context, whatever it is. Humans don't have to process all that data. We're drowning in data. The third industrial revolution drowned us in data. We have more data today than we could ever consume in any fashion. And that's what the agents can do for us. And then they can feed us the right information. And then we can leverage that information to make better decisions. Now, obviously, that has some flaws in it. And we've seen that at its worst, but that's getting really refined, and you just don't see the same things anymore.
And it's interesting too, or well, I think one of the things that like really, really piques my curiosity on this, obviously the idea even just behind the welding helmet, and I'm sure you guys are probably already applying wearables in your solutions in these different applications that you already have, be it the restaurants, which I know is your lane at SoundHound, but or the hotels, or where I guess hotels probably wouldn't be a great fit for that, but in these other applications. But with that is the for a while post.com boom, and then as the mobile apps kind of gave rise, and even now is still in the mobile app area and in a lot of software, it's what we call wrappers, right? They're taking a service like there's probably 10,000 apps on the App Store that are just really have just packaged ChatGPT or other LLM service providers into the app. And that's all it's doing is putting like a skin, basically a facade over this service. But and so a lot of technology has been that. A lot of the services that people are using every day a lot of it is that, where it is wrappers around existing technologies, and you could find 30 other apps that do the exact same thing just with different screens, basically. But you guys are taking this and applying it to hardware as well, and bringing it into the real world. And this is not just skinning something. Yes, you're making calls for some of the stuff to these LLM providers, but again, it is so much more than that. And that is just, I think the foresight of that in terms of being able to step outside that box of, okay, we're just going to package some extra features on top of this existing architecture is so, like, for you, what in the restaurant realm, how are you guys bringing this into the real world more? Like you've touched on it with the drive-through stuff, but are you guys having your employees use wearables in some of these restaurants and stuff too?
Yeah, I got to be very careful here as an officer of a publicly traded company. So Zach, I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to be extremely careful about what we're doing, and you can connect the dots.
Okay.
So just imagine what I've told you about welding is connecting a practitioner to the greatest technology ever put together. Now, that's exactly what the executive team at SoundHound did when they reached out to me. They had done the same thing with a company called Allset, the Ukrainian company, then me at Sync 3, then Amelia, then Interactions. And really what they've done is they brought practitioners together that touch every vertical in our world. Hotels, retail, hospitality, restaurants, travel, you name it, and connect to almost every device in our world. So now think about that electricity metaphor. Today, we focused on the hardest thing. We've solved AI in drive-through. That's the hardest thing. Now, what else could you use in a restaurant? Let's just get creative. You go out to dinner and you've been to the restaurant before. In the wearable, the server could see, this is Zach. And they could hear it too. You could hear it. You could do it. Okay. Hi, Zach. Welcome back. Are we celebrating something today? Just imagine the kind of enhanced experience you could get anywhere. So I believe that what you will see permeating every skill, from welding to neurosurgery and everything in between. Practitioners will bundle the data and the endpoints the gadgets that they need, whether it's a laser or a surgical tool or a MIG welder, doesn't matter. They'll connect those things and they'll make better decisions. When they did Brenda's brain surgery to take the tumor out, they had to go, the incision to get to the tumor in her ventricle took 3.5 hours to minimize the TBI she was going to have. Wow. And it was all guided by AI. She had 10.5 hours of scans, CT scans, so that they would make sure they missed the most pressing things. Thank God, man. You think about how you're a miracle that you just survive, let alone can, I don't even know how you keep up with all these people that you talk to. But your story is really the same thing. It's a story born out of suffering. You know, it's just think about what I started with. Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, character, hope. And now you become an agent of hope. That's exactly what you're doing here with all these people. You're carrying the banner of hope to people. And if you have a chance to read Chan Hillman's book on hope, The Science of Hope, hope is the leading indicator of everything. Oh no. Hope is the sorry about that. The leading indicator of everything in this world. It's the leading predictor of academic success, relationship success, everything. When we find that we can raise a student's hope score by 2 percentage points, they'll go up a letter grade in whatever school they're in. So that's a catalyst, and the catalyst needs a tool, needs a power source. I believe in that. It's that power source for the future.
And that's a weird one. I've heard, I'm trying to think of what context it was talked about. It was on podcasts, but I don't remember. I don't remember the subject of the podcast or anything, but this person was quoting that, the percentage of, I don't know if it was millennials. I don't know. It was a younger generation. The percentage of this younger generation has the lowest belief that the American dream is achievable ever. And I find that really, really hard to believe.
I don't find it hard to believe at all.
You don't think so?
Suicide rate. Listen, Zach, suicide rates. I mean, I'm telling, who am I to talk, right? My experience certainly pales in comparison to yours, but watching your middle school son lying lifeless on your kitchen floor with 6 paramedics working on him is a very refining moment to understand that. Our vets are killing themselves at record numbers. Our autistic people, our foster youth, just about every demographic of young people are killing themselves at faster rates than ever before. Now, that's an epidemic of hopelessness, and that's really what we focus on. We really focus on fostering hope. So when you think about that process, we want to show you that you're not expendable. So the first thing they do when they walk into one of our shops is they find community. They realize that they're not alone. And then they make something, and making something with your hands changes everything. I learned that when I had a hobby ranch. As an executive, some of my deals take 10 years to make. And boy, when you got a chainsaw in your hand or a tractor and you decide you want to take down a tree or whatever, you can do that instantaneously. And there's something powerful and fulfilling about that. Then you connect that with a plan and a purpose, a very simple connect the dots. When you sign up for this welding class, you work your butt off for 7 weeks. You then pass the certification exam. We give you the $900 worth of tools you need to get started, and you go get a job right away. You're earning 6 figures in Texas right away. That's transformational, and people can see a clear path. That's what people don't see today because they've been fed this lie that the only path to a successful future is through secondary education. Now, I'm a product of it. I thank God for it. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying it hasn't been working for us recently because we're not training people in the things that we need. And we're not inspiring them. That's the biggest thing we need to do. And that's what I love about blacksmithing. Because when you get a kid to make a simple knife in a 3-hour blacksmithing class, they are hooked. They're hooked. 40% of our students are girls. Can you imagine that?
That's shocking. Yeah.
And they love it. It changes their lives because it gives them a clear path and it gives them hope.
When they had my blind ass making a knife in 3 hours, I have it. Actually, I'll show you my knife. I've got it right here. Hang on.
Ron told me that you would have the knife out. I did not try to get you to show it. Look at that.
Is it in the
You made that in 3 hours. It is in the camera.
Yes, they had a Wounded Warrior Project partner. But, you know, Ron is all about helping people. And so he has partnered with Wounded Warrior Project. I only found out when we did the podcast. I met him probably 6 years ago. It was like very recent, very soon after I had shot myself. I'm pretty positive it was in that first year. If not, it may have been 2020. But yeah, now I can't remember which one it is. It's one of those. But it was very, very early on, and they had me in there with like everyone else. I don't know if they'd worked with a totally blind dude before, but they just did it, and it probably looks like a blind guy made it. It feels like a blind guy made it. But
it really looks good. I think it was a railroad spike.
It was, yeah. But even like that, it gave me the itch, and it was like you talked about that feeling the heat coming out of the freaking forge while you're standing over the anvil, just sweating your nuts off, and then they pull that thing out, and you're trying to hammer on that with your eyes closed and not burn yourself or someone else around you or smash somebody. Like it's the same way sports do that for me, whether it be skiing or martial arts or whitewater kayaking. Like they draw my focus into that soul level. And I think that is you can learn that skill. Like, I think that's a very valuable thing. Like you mentioned for kids to be in there doing, and you learn the focus that requires, you can then start to direct your focus in a way towards other things, even if blacksmithing doesn't become your things. That is a learned skill that you can just direct your mind towards. And it is, well, and it doesn't have to be blacksmithing. It's just all these things that you're talking about are they're pertinent, and it's yes, having that tool in your toolbox, whether it is just the mental tool or literally having the welding set after you've gone through what really, I mean, a 7-week training program is just a blink of an eye. It probably doesn't feel like it if you're 18, but like that is a blink of an eye to go through and come out and have a full career ahead of you and be totally qualified for it. It is,
hope as we deploy large language models, we'll cut that time in half. But I'm mindful of the time, so I don't want to run your show. But I did want to. You brought up blacksmithing, so this is really not fair for you because I'll show it to your audience. I'm pulling out my Civil War cavalry saber, and you'll notice that it was broken and it was completely rusted, and I think the reason why I love the blacksmith shop as a metaphor for life. Remember I talked about suffering, right? And my favorite author, Max Lucado, wrote a book called On the Anvil. And the anvil is the perfect metaphor. The blacksmith is the perfect metaphor for life. If you think about a blacksmith shop, this sword was captured in the Second Battle of Bull Run. It was broken and discarded, and someone had to put it back together. So it was laying in the corner of the blacksmith shop, discarded, not useful.
Uh-huh.
And then when the tools go out the other side of the blacksmith shop, they're weapons that are forged for war, and that we take them into battle. The place in between is a place of fire and the anvil. It's a place of pain. It's a place of suffering. Suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character. Character, hope. That's this sword, and what it means to me. But we're going to try to, we're endeavoring to take all these things and train tradespeople faster than anyone ever imagined. And so he, here's, it's kind of funny how this all comes together. 3 months ago, a friend asked me to help him build a trade school in Africa, Kenya specifically. And I said politely no, because this is America's family, America's family. And that's my assignment as America. Yesterday, I got a call about a welding and blacksmithing shop being built in an orphanage in Guatemala City, where orphans are having their lives transformed through blacksmithing. Another Forged in Fire winner and a friend of Ron's, wait for it, a friend of Ron's. And then Ron says to me, "Oh, this orphanage is being done by Rich Griffith's organization." I'm like, really? Rich Griffith was a tight end for the Jaguars.
Uh-huh.
I've known him for a couple of decades. I
Did you play
connected with
football
him.
with him?
No.
Okay.
I'd never played in the NFL. But I've known him for at least a decade, more than a decade. But think about how this all comes together. That's when it hit me once again. Everything I've ever done in my life, every person I've ever met, every relationship I've ever had is all focused for this moment right now.
Have you been able to connect with Mike Rowe yet and tell this story?
I haven't.
Okay.
I'd really like somebody to introduce me to her.
I don't know him yet, but I mean, he's obviously someone I would love to have on here one day. I did just recently have one of his past guests on the show, and I wonder if I asked her, like, hey, this is someone Mike would want to talk to, even though I don't know Mike. That's a big ask. Like, I don't even really know her.
You know, the work Mike has done is iconic. He's done more for the trades than anybody in human history. And I think the only thing I would advise Mike is he routinely says that, you know, AI won't hurt these jobs. It won't take these jobs. And I really appreciate that. What I'd love to show him is how AI can be used to amplify, accelerate, and magnify these jobs.
Yeah, because he's overlooking that fact. It's not so black and white like it
He
is.
don't know that he is, but I haven't heard him say that. So you know, he's probably, if he ever hears this, he'll probably say, "Well, that knucklehead Steve didn't listen to this or that one or whatever." I listen to him a lot because I listen to wise people, and I haven't heard that from him. So
He's obviously, I mean, when you hear him on his podcast, he's a very, very intelligent man. So, that would you just, even like, I need to have you back on here. It's hard because I don't have a team. It's still just me running all this stuff. So it's, that's why the 2 hour thing is like where I've learned that's where I have to cut it off. But I have so much more that I want to dig into with you. But since we're on this, I want to stay more on some of the stuff that we've talked about with the trades for the remainder of this, if you're all right with this. I know we were
absolutely
okay.
Wherever you want to take it, take whatever time you give me.
On one hand, and I want to bring up the hope stuff some more. I just need to think about how. So I'm going to ask you this first. You mentioned the shift that America made towards, or maybe, for a long time, a college degree has been the focus. I think it's probably the trades are being more recognized now, again, more so than they have been in the recent past. And maybe that's a bias of mine because of the media that I do consume. But what do you think that shift was? And how can you, other than the way that you already have, and I guess maybe you already have explained how or why this shift could be necessary, but why do you think that shift occurred in the first place?
Well, I think it was kind of true that the system, the schools, they were built to equip 50 years ago. They equipped people for white collar professions, and they did a pretty darn good job of that. But then those jobs just started to go away, and the trades, you know, for many decades, we've had about 5 tradespeople going out for every one that comes in. And then, you know, we've worked really hard. A lot of brilliant people with a lot of money have done a lot to do this. Now it's like 5 to 2, but it's still untenable. And so I think you have to do two things. You have to first inspire the next generation. And the thing that you're seeing happen naturally is as the pay for these careers has doubled, it's attracting more people to them. But the thing that I think we're missing is a maker does something with his or her hands, and it's transformation. It's transformation. And when we show young people that, they see that there's something better. And really what it does is it raises the floor and it lifts the ceiling for them. They see the world differently. And so then they have to see a clear path. So training connects directly to income. People need to earn while they learn. That's where we connect AI in the background, making work safer, faster, more precise, not replacing humans. Like I'm telling you right now, a decade ago, I told my folks, listen, we're going to have more jobs in restaurants after we're done than they're changing. They're changing. And you know what? Consistently, every brand we go into in my own company, we have more people making more money because the companies are prospering, so the workers prosper. That's the future that I see. And when we can show our young people that this is the future that they can get, and they don't have to wait 4 years and graduate hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
Which, by the way, you cannot escape even if you file for bankruptcy at some point. That will chase you all the way. They will take out of your Social Security as a 70-year-old man in retirement. Like, that is the one kind of debt you can never escape. It's a scary thing to be signing yourself into as an 18-year-old and not fully understanding the consequences on top of the time investment, everything else that you've already laid out. And maybe I think this really, that the art of creation in whatever capacity that is really, I think it is. I know that this sounds weird coming from a guy who doesn't work with his hands because I can't see, but like for me, software development is creation. I was an artist when I could see. This is still something for me where it is a tangible thing to me. I can see it in my mind what I am creating, and I know what it's doing for people. It is that is such a more fulfilling path than going and working your desk job. And yes, that's not to, some people are content with that, but again, in giving people hope, I think some of that hopelessness that we see in the world and some of the negativity that comes out of people is because they fucking hate their jobs. You hate going and punching the clock at Dunder Mifflin paper, wherever. And I think really this is something that is inherently fulfilling, whether you're good at it or not. Making something is something that's why kids love crafts, right? They'll show you a picture that you can't tell what it is, but if you tell them it's beautiful, there's something about making something that is inherently human. I don't know why, but it is, for whatever reason, it scratches that itch. It may not, maybe knives isn't your thing, or maybe welding is not your thing, but we all, I think, have that in us, whether it be something physical like that, or maybe you're making music, but I think it's something maybe partially because of what you've touched on with the push towards higher education and, the lingering kind of shadows of the past and what was required in the past, that like creation gets overlooked in people's upbringings, to where, if your parents aren't creatives, then you're probably not going to get exposed to a lot of that stuff. So like, even just as if it's not going, if you're, hey, I'm 25 years into my career already, I'm not going to switch over to welder. Like, go try one of these shops, right? Try a class at a shop like Kilroy's, man. It is, just get your hands dirty and build something. And I think that is another kind of vessel of hope for people. And it can be, in a more approachable way for people maybe who feel like they've already, as, like I said, rooted themselves down one path.
Yeah, Ron has students. I mean, he proudly proclaims that Kilroy's trains students from 9 to 99, and some of his greatest are in their 80s. You know, lifetime learners change the world because the Chinese have a wonderful, I have two adopted Chinese kids. The Chinese have a wonderful expression. They say that you can't put anything in a cup that's already full. And if you think about that, humility is really the green fee for wisdom. Because if you're an empty vessel, there's a lot of room to put stuff in. And that's one of the things that I just love about watching these makers perform their craft. As I said, for many years, as an Army officer, as an executive, as an entrepreneur, it took years and decades to put deals together. And there was, back in Colorado, I bought a small hobby ranch. And until Brenda got her brain tumor, when I had to sell it, I just couldn't keep up with it anymore. And it's a lifestyle that exposed me to that because I could take a tractor and I could build a garden in a day. And I could grab a chainsaw and a 10-ton kinetic splitter. And we got a gadget for the slash. We call it, big wood chipper, like from Fargo. We called it the Angry Beaver.
Yeah.
And there's something, again, my dearest friend lost both of his legs in a motorcycle accident. And Colin came over to come and run the slash through the Angry Beaver with us. And my son, who was just probably 10 at the time, Matthew, I haven't talked about Matthew. I love that boy, man. Matthew was like, Dad, we're going to let Mr. Colin run the Angry Beaver? I'm like, dude, he's got he just lost his legs. He's still a man.
Yeah.
Not 5 minutes later, I was grabbing Colin's belt as he was getting sucked in. He undid his seat belt in the wheelchair, and he was getting pulled in. And I was thinking that his wife Sue was just going to kill me for, but he had the time of his life. He had the time of his life. At the very end, we talk about that a lot. That experience that he spent so much time, 16 years in rehab hospitals, where they keep chipping away at you and cutting more away from you, and that experience for him, that time on the ranch, he could be a man again, and that's kind of what makers do. They produce things. Whether it's art or literature or blacksmithing.
Yeah.
You learn that very quickly how fulfilling that is. And I think for us old folks, it's really important for us so that our children, we have that perspective so that we can tell our children what an honorable thing that is for them to do. And by the way, you can make it kill them.
Which is nice benefit of all that. It's like, and that opens the doors for you. And then, when people have more lateral mobility with their finances, that opens them to start being able to tinker and start to kind of innovate and start to maybe open the door for other people. It really is like that momentum is a real thing in these contexts. Like the momentum of the human spirit, like that is the pay it forward is not the right term, and it also sounds almost like kind of corny here, but that is a thing, that investment that you're putting into other people, that sparks that in other people, and that carries forward. And I want to correct, I think I said something to the fact of like, I don't work with my hands because I'm blind. That was not accurate. Obviously people do it. I can do it with the right help. That's one of the things Ron and I talked about, was like, this is, the given someone willing to take the chance on me, I can do most things still. And just like, I could learn to do that stuff. If there's other blind people listening, you can too. I know Blondie Bedwell, who's been on the show, totally blind man, was building houses for years after he lost his sight. I know full-time leather workers and woodworkers and all sorts of other things that are totally blind. Like, that was not what I was trying to say. That was a misstep there. But
well, listen, dude, I don't think you need to worry about it. Nobody's going to be judging you because I've been watching you running this podcast with no help. I couldn't imagine doing it sighted.
it's just the tech stuff on the back. A lot of technology is not accessible, and so that's why it's that stuff. Really, I love having these conversations, and all this stuff is awesome. It's the back end stuff is kind of is finicky, and that's kind of where the yeah, I don't know. It's all worth it, right? Like it's everything. There's you invest a little skin in the game to do it. And like I get to connect with people like you. I could sit here, I have no doubt you and I could sit here and talk for 3.5 hours. Like and I have a bunch more things I want to ask you, but I'll have to have you back on at some point, which is also not a bad thing. But further down this vein of hope, I think we've been able to attack it from multiple angles here. But you've obviously this is some of this is Zachary's story to tell, but also you were there, you're his parent. You've seen obviously you've seen him at his lowest low, and now you've seen him through the development of hope, the establishment of hope again in his life. He sounds like he's kicking ass and has
Taking names, baby.
happened to go down just coincidentally happened to go down this very path that of the blacksmithing path.
Not coincidentally, it's Ron. So I sent my boys to Colorado and they made a sword. And that was it. They were both hooked. They fell head over heels in love with it. So Matthew's working as an aircraft mechanic and Zachary's a welding instructor at Kilrose.
Jeez, man. It's I guess I still haven't totally had this conversation with my parents. And if you're not comfortable talking about it, tell me. But I will say, I know my parents have struggled. I know my dad's had some struggles that are his story to tell, so I won't tell them. And then my mom, both my parents took my suicide attempt very differently. I think my perception is that my dad perceived it as being his fault. And then my mom and I are still in disagreements that she thinks I owe her an apology for having shot myself. I disagree. I think that makes it about her. But, I'm curious to have, if you're comfortable talking about it as a parent, what was that like for you?
So I only have orphans because my first marriage didn't work. It didn't survive what happened with Sarah and Cal. So I have five kids, 2 biological and 3 adopted. My 3 adopted all had special needs, and so they were pretty incessantly bullied and tormented. Anna, we haven't spoken about. We adopted Brenda adopted as a single mom in China, and I mean, I can't even fathom that, the love that it would take to be childless and then to go halfway across the world to find somebody that God intended for you. And Anna is autistic and she was misdiagnosed her whole life. And at 16, now I have some guilt about that. At 16, they said, no, this is autism. And here's the thing. She's never going to hold down a real job. She's never going to drive a car, and she's never going to have a meaningful relationship. Okay. Anna's the friendliest cashier at Kroger. She's very, very good at what she does. She's had a flawless driving record for the last 4 years. Took her till 20 to get her license. And she's now engaged to be married. And so
You showed them, huh?
that's what I'm saying, man. Matthew is a very gifted athlete, and so he didn't get quite the bullying. And Zachary with the very visible Chinese in Colorado, bilateral cleft lip and palate, talk different, look different, little scrawny. He was, he didn't make the growth charts. He wasn't on the growth charts until he's like 10 years old.
He was that small.
So he's just an incessant. Oh, and you should see him now, man. He's just a brute.
He's slinging hammers all day.
But he's totally ripped. He carrying shirt rat and
I love that.
and but he was taking meds and he took an overdose of Geodon and we didn't see it, and I totally blame myself for it for a while. But listen, man, I keep going back to, and I just encourage you to just love on your parents and just hear them and just experience what they're going through, because everybody everybody has a slightly different journey. So for me, it really became about understanding what he went through, and just doing everything humanly possible to try to create an environment where he never felt that hopeless again. So back to being a soldier, back to being a grunt. You just focus on what's right in front of you. Because if you don't deal with the 3-foot world, you ain't going to survive to change the world. So you have to deal with the threat that's right in front of you. And the threat that was right in front of us was just getting them through the day. So
Yeah.
we didn't see it coming. That was the hardest thing ever. You think of yourself as a great parent, but I done raised 5 kids and 4 grandkids, and I ain't lost one yet. I came real close.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe you and your mom should talk more about what lies ahead than what lies
Yeah.
in the past.
We heard, I, I, I s- decided for almost 2 years, like we weren't communicating. Like I set that wall up, and we have recently reconnected. So that conversation will be ahead at some point. And then I realized in saying that, I was like, I do still need to have that conversation with my dad. Our family, I would say I'm the only one really who communicates, and I used to not be that way. That's only been through therapy and learning through, my being a bad partner in relationships, that I've been bad at that as well. And so I need to have that conversation at some point. And I wanted to get your take on it, some of that out of personal curiosity, and also I think you said it yourself, and I was kind of hoping you would. I talk about this a lot, and especially when I give speeches, I get pe people always come up to me after, and there's usually very strong responses. And like I try and paint the picture that because it is a true picture, that like it is not your fault that happened. Like it is. And it sounds like you said that you used to think it was, um, which I can't imagine what it's like even still to obviously have gone through that. But I think that's an important thing for people to hear, because that's another huge contributor to suicides is reactionary suicides after things like this. Had maybe even in my family that would have happened if I had died. You never know. Like that happens a lot. I had a family friend recently approached me because they had lost a family member. It was a family member had lost their child, and then the parent then followed soon after, in response to
Yeah.
that pain. And I think a lot of that comes from misplaced guilt,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Survivor's guilt, that. I mean, it's just, listen, man, I don't know. I just get up every morning, put one foot in front of the other, and try to do better today than I did yesterday. But I'm very encouraged that, you're still in communication with your mom. And like, listen, man, life is messy. It,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you got to have an abundance of grace, because we are all jacked up, jacked up.
And none of us know what the hell we're doing.
That's right.
That's
So
something I've only realized like in the last couple of years. Like no one knows what the hell they're doing.
nobody knows what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
We're just muddling through, and it's just a lot better to do it in community. It's a lot better to live life in community.
I just I think that's a beautiful thing that's part of the core tenets of your mission, is that you are doing that, because it is so that is a cornerstone of your life, whether you think you're a loner or not. Like you do need that. And if you really stop, and if you're listening and you're like, I don't need community, stop and look around you. You'll see that you do. You have it somewhere, or you're missing it.
So the one kid I haven't talked about is Cal, who's my son in LA.
Okay.
Cal again had tremendous gender identity issues and pain and torment, and did a lot of self-harm, and came very close to suicidal ideation. And Cal's an amazing person with a heart bigger than me, man. And I just think that, like we can't live our kids' lives. They can't live ours. But when we stay in relationship, and that's true. It's part of what really frustrates me about America today, man. People will say to me, "Well, Steve, this sounds like a conservative thing or a political thing," and I just laugh and say, "What are my politics?" And everybody goes, "Well, I have no idea." So that's right, because it's not. I'm not political. I don't want any part of it. It's
Yeah.
nonsensical to me, and the amount of division and angst that we generate in America through social media, through politics. Like, it's really simple, man. Just love the person in front of you. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. You're rarely going to agree with anybody. You put three people in a room, you're going to have three different opinions about everything.
Yeah.
So just get over it and talk about it and, lead with love and, remember what suffering is the key. Think about the blacksmith shop. This sword captured in the Second Battle of Bull Run is now fulfilling an amazing purpose that John Bobo's great 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 grandfather could never have imagined. That he would be the inspiration for a movement that's going to transform trade education in the world. I keep trying to keep it in America, and we keep having to teach other people about it, and we'll keep teaching people as long as they're asking, because this is not something we're going to keep to ourselves. We can't. Hope is something we have to give away all the time.
And I think you're a perfect picture of that. Obviously, you and your family together have been through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and you know, it's not only does it sound like all of you have hope in your lives and a lot of it, but so much of it that you're giving it away, as you've said. And it's just, you're an incredibly wise man. You're obviously just so intelligent. I do need to have you back on at some point to talk to you more, because this is, I really, I think we could just go on forever. And I'm so fascinated by all of this. And I think everything that you've shared, especially because it is nothing you've said is political. There was nothing. Politics don't have room. There's no need for politics to be injected into a lot of conversations. Just like none of this it very well could have, but it's unnecessary. And I think on top of everything else, this was a great example of that. And I just I admire you for everything that you're doing. I would like to meet you in person so I can shake your hand someday. So we need to figure that out.
I can't wait, Zach. We're going to figure that out. I'm greatly honored, and I was so inspired when Ron told me your story. I To see what you're doing with your pain it's breathtaking, man.
Thank you. And just trying to be like you, man. So that's all I try to do. But hey, where can everybody find everything that you're doing, whether it be America's Family,
So you
what?
can always find me on LinkedIn with, my name is so strange. There's no other Steve Bigari anywhere, Bigari. Um, soundhound.com, SOUND, just like it sounds, soundhound.com. You can learn about the transformational work that we're doing there. Of course, Ron's work is kilroysworkshop.com, like Kilroy, the little World War II guy who was peering over the fence. That's a whole nother story. And the America's Family work is the nonprofit work. You can find that story at amfol.org. And really, the fourth IR, the fourth industrial revolution, the word picture for that today is a product we're creating called 1848. So you can go to 1848.net and see how this is all it all weaves together. You can't imagine that all these, I'm the most ADHD guy that ever lived, and it's like popcorn thrown up in the air, and somehow it all just comes together in this beautiful tapestry. You'll learn about that at 1848. but we've just secured the rights to 4IR Global, 4IR.global, and every manifestation of that. You won't find anything there, but I suspect that soon you will, because this is the problems in America exist across the entire globe. And when Rich told me about his work in Guatemala in an orphanage, and Mama, Brenda is she's Mama Bear, and she's the greatest mother in the history of Earth, and she fell in love with this twice. Because after the surgery, she didn't remember anything about me. She knew who I was, but she wasn't in love with me, and she knew intellectually that I was her husband, but that was it. So the odds,
God.
the odds of falling in love with this twice, like,
Yeah, I don't know how she did it, dude.
astronomical. So I just think that so we're kind of tying this all together. And when somebody calls me and says they want to teach orphans in Guatemala how to be tradespeople, I'm in.
Hell yeah. That's a beautiful, beautiful place to wrap it up. And
Share this hope, man. Sharing hope.
yeah, absolutely. And then I'm gonna have you back on here at some point, because we have so much more to talk about. But thank you again. This has just been I enjoyed the hell out of this. So thank you so much for taking the time and just sharing it all.
You make it easy, man. You're really good at what you do.
Thank you. And thanks everyone at home.
Call me, man. Call me.
Okay.
Call me, Zach.
I got you. I'm going to wrap this up saying here. Thanks everyone at home for listening to another episode of Going In Blind. Holy hell, there's a lot to unwrap, as there always is. This was, I wish that I didn't, before I started doing video episodes, I could record the intros afterwards, but I can't edit video, so I can't do that anymore. But I definitely did not do this conversation enough justice. But, be sure to share this thing around. I think it's important just to not just to share the hope, but this is the next, again, this is I truly believe that this is also the fourth industrial revolution coming around, and if you want to get more into the technical stuff behind all this AI, go back and listen. I think it was episode 56 with Adam Chyer. That is definitely the guest. That is Cheyer for his last name. And then Ron Hardman, who we kept talking about with Kilroy's Workshop, was just on the show recently. I think earlier I said that was episode 73. Go back and listen to those, and please go support what Steve's doing. This stuff is incredible, and I don't know. I could sit here and ramble about it forever because I'm endlessly fascinated by it. But thank you guys for stopping by, and hopefully I will see you again next week. Bye.